Hello, all. Welcome back to the Fangirl Fantasy Podcast. I am Julie Russell, and today's guest is Melissa Martino. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. Like we just said, I haven't seen you in what feels like 5 years.
For real, it does feel like 5 years, but it's not too long ago, but
I know we have I feel like we won't see each other for like a few years, and then we have our spurts of like, okay, see you tomorrow. See you next
yeah,
Thursday.
seriously. It's like, all right, I'll see you next week at the next time. So
Yeah, so we are mutual friends through the Jonas Brothers. The Jonas Brothers introduced us.
yes.
We're kind of part of the East Coast fandom, I guess is what we would call it. I'm from Boston and you're in the Connecticut area. And so whenever, there was events in New York City, it would just be like, okay, see you at Good Morning America,
See you
see you at
there.
that show. And we kind of just created our own little, group of friends. And yeah, I feel like we've known each other probably for 7, 8 years now.
Do you remember the first time we met? I was thinking about this the other day and I was like, I think I remember.
Is it Six Flags?
No, so I think it was when Joe was on The Next and we were all at MTV and and then he tweeted that picture. Like, do you remember?
I wasn't there. Heather was there.
Oh, you weren't?
No, but Heather was there.
I was going to say, I thought that was the first time I met you and Heather. Oh, I thought you were there.
No, but I mean, I remember it perfectly because I had Joe's tweets sent to my phone, obviously, because it was 2011, 2012.
Yeah.
And you guys were all in the city and all of a sudden Joe Jonas tweets a photo and was like, love you guys. And I'm like, that is every single one of my friends.
So funny. Yeah. Then if that wasn't it, then I honestly, I don't know. It must have just been one of those Good Morning America lines or something like that. But
seriously, they all blur together. Sometimes I'm like, wait, what year was that time that we went? What time? Was that Today's Show or Good Morning America? They all just blurred together.
And just remembering that we used to do that kind of stuff is I'm like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. But it was so fun.
Consistently.
Yeah, we just rode on no sleep for days.
But honestly, I would not trade it for the world. And some of those memories are my favorite memories ever.
Me too. And it just kind of if you want something, you're going to go for it,
Yes. And taking the megabus and then taking the megabus home.
Oh
and you're like, that's the best night's sleep you ever get is the megabus ride home because you haven't slept in 36 hours. Your feet have blisters on them. You smell and you're just so nasty from being in New York City all day.
Exactly.
And you find you're like, oh yes, I get 4 hours on the bus ride home to just sleep.
Comfiest chairs yet.
Yes, exactly. And that's so funny. So we actually have also kind of a similar background of, then we transitioned after college into the music and entertainment industry, and you followed the career into radio.
Yep.
And you've been doing radio for quite a bit now. I feel like you're an OG.
Yeah, I jumped into radio actually. I interned for a radio station in college and I didn't really even think of radio as part of the entertainment industry, which is kind of weird, but I didn't really realize that was a way you can go. And then I interned up in Rhode Island for WBRU at the time. It's closed down now, and I did promotions in there and I was like, this is kind of cool. And then when I graduated, I just jumped into radio here in Connecticut and I've been there ever since. So it's definitely crazy. And it's cool to kind of see how what I used to do fan wise kind of connects still in radio. So
that's interesting to me that you didn't see radio as a way in, because for me, that was exactly what I wanted to do. I listened because I listened to the radio stations, the interviews, all of that. And then Boston being a major city and a major market, we always had artists coming through to the radio stations. So I would go to the radio stations to meet my favorite artists. Because I knew, they have an interview at 9 a.m. with the morning show. Well, they got to go to the radio station to be on so I would me and my friends would go, or they would do these private performances and I'd win to go, or, again, I'd just wait outside. So for me in my head, I'm like, I want to see my favorite artists. I got to go work in radio. So for me, it's very interesting that you kind of the opposite and it kind of just fell in your lap. Where for me, I'm like, I'm going to be in radio. I love it. Like I love the whole aspect of all of it.
Yeah, it was like, I don't know if because I had honestly stood outside at radio stations too sometimes, but I don't know. I think I was so focused like in college on, all right, I want to be in concerts and things like that, that was like where I was going. And then I was like, wait a second. And then I feel like in school kind of made me realize like this industry is huge. There's so many different ways to go into it, or like just so many different branches. So once I kind of got that radio bug, I was like, all right. And I've been there for a while now. So it's been cool to stick out though, and just kind of see. It's definitely different because I was always jealous of like your radio life, because like it was the genre of music you were listening to. So
Mm-hmm.
like when I jumped in, I worked for a classic rock and a country radio station. So I had to like kind of introduce myself to those genres, but like now country is one of my favorite genres, and just kind of being around those artists and being around the music all the time, like brings me like so much more passion, appreciation. And so it was cool because radio has definitely broadened my horizons for music for sure.
And country artists are literally the nicest artists ever.
The nicest people in the
They're
world.
the best. They
Oh
will do
my
anything
goodness.
for you. They will do meet and greets for days. They're just so sweet. Yeah, like in my cluster of stations that I worked with, there was a country station that I didn't work directly with, but I would help out at like their bigger events and all that. And then it got to the point I'm like, if you guys need my help, please ask me because I want to, because it's just so fun and it's just such a vibe. And the fans of country music are like also die hard
Yep.
fans.
Yep. And just like being on the side of being able to like give people experiences like for, because I'm happy that country kind of has that same fan artist relationship like we experienced, so kind of being able to be on that side and being like, oh hey, like you just won meet and greets to your favorite artist or whatever, and just like seeing their reaction, that's like the best thing for me, because I'm like, I've been in your shoes so many times, like of really wanting to win this contest or whatever. And so yeah, that brings me like just to a deep appreciation for.
It's full circle for you.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I had someone like right before the pandemic, she had won front row tickets and meet and greets to Brad Paisley through us. And when I had to like break the news to her, she was like, oh my gosh, like he was my wedding song. And it's now the 1 year, like that's the 1 year anniversary of my
Oh,
thing, like all this stuff. And I was like, oh my God, like it just makes me so happy.
yeah. So you're in the promotions department and you also have your hand in digital. So doing promotions, that's, giving away the tickets, doing away like the online contesting, setting up the events when, there had events. And then you also said, you're involved in digital. So how do those two kind of correlate?
Yeah, so I jumped into digital. I mean, I jumped into promotions pretty much when I started, and that was where I wanted to go, because that was where you were hands-on with the concerts and the events. And I was kind of going to like all different events around our area and setting up and just interacting with the fans of the stations and stuff. And that's something that I had wanted to do. And then obviously it was cool too, because I got to like create contests and kind of put my own love for like fan engagement into those contests, which I thought was fun, because then just kind of throwing in your own personality into these fun contests with that can contribute to tickets or meet and greets or whatever. And then once the pandemic hit, obviously I was like, oh wow, promotions for radio is going to be way different.
Mhm.
And so lucky enough, my company was like, hey, do you want to do digital now? And I was like, oh God, like I know nothing about digital besides
Mhm.
like how to post on social media, but it was more of like tracking, like it's still the social media pages too, but also like kind of creating content and tracking like the traffic on our digital sites and things like that. And I was like, oh my God, like, I mean, I'll try. I was like, I'll do it, but I don't,
Yeah.
it's going to be, we're going to learn together at this point, So I'm doing that as well now. And it's cool because they go hand in hand. Like obviously I'm creating a lot of all of our contests now are online and things like that. So it's fun to see that concerts are slowly finally starting to come back because that bug is coming back and our fans are getting excited and things like that. So I'm happy to have that. But yeah, it was definitely a quick jump into, all right, let's see how we can do both of these roles together. But that's the life of radio. But yeah, it was cool I got to learn something completely new during when the world pretty much shut down. So I saw that as a win for me.
How do you see yourself juggling both of these roles and like these separate departments? Once, concerts and events do come back in full force, do you see yourself being a little overwhelmed, or because they do integrate so well with each other, do you think it will be an easy balance?
Um, Kind of a little bit of both. It depends. I feel like it depends on how fast these events and stuff start coming back. Um, so I don't really know. I guess I'll see, but it's really nice to be able to just like know the promotions department like that. So it's not like I'm relearning something new all over again. So I'm happy that I'm able to kind of balance the two on that end. But I think it's definitely going to be a lot of work. But once an event is done, it's so rewarding to see. So I kind of thrive off of that rewarding factor at the end when everything's like done and it's like, oh, I just did that. Like that's cool.
Definitely. Do you ever feel like you're like, you plan if it's like a big concert or a big event and you just like the whole couple weeks before you're like plan, stressed out, not enjoying it. And then like you get to the event and you're just like, okay, everything just needs to go really well, like still not really enjoying it. And then like the event's over and you're like, wow, that just went by so quick, but you just spent like 4 weeks of just like stressing out about the event.
Literally. And that happens a lot because like I feel like I go into stress mode, but stress mode is also like focus mode, it's like we just have to get this done and I don't care how.
Yes.
So kind of just doing that. And then I'm always like, oh my God, there's no way we're going to get all this done in time. And then I'm like,
Hmm.
but you don't really have a choice. Like you're getting it done. So just having like those weeks before of just grinding it all out. But then just like once I'm there and like once I'm seeing everything like unfold I'm like, all right, nothing's on fire. Everything is going how it should be going. Like it's just, I love that rewarding factor at the end. It's like, okay, it really wasn't as bad. I look back and I'm like, all right, it wasn't that bad. Like,
Hmm. But
so
you just in your head, you think of like all the little things that could go wrong, or like, shit, do I have enough Sharpies and duct tape?
exactly. Exactly. Or like, did I bring duct tape just in case? Like stuff like that always. And you gotta, yeah,
Did you guys lay off the street team promotions assistants during COVID?
we did.
So
So,
are you going to have to rehire them all back, or what does that look like?
yeah, so that's kind of like an interesting conversation right now of what is going to happen because, yeah, like as everything happened, like all of our part timers went. So it's like, okay, I'll do it. But then once everything is starting to come back now, it's like, all right, am I still doing it? Or are we going to start bringing a team back? So I think, I don't really know yet, but I mean, there would be kind of no way for me to put on like actual events by myself. So, but yeah, it's just been in talks for like those lower scale events that are just like pretty much like community driven. We've been talking about like having our DJs actually go out and do them, which is crazy because that wasn't the case back. And they were usually just like the talent who was the guest there, So talking about kind of having them have to step up and do these events just because since I took on another role as well, it's like you can only kind of push yourself or pull yourself in so many directions. So yeah, when that time comes, it's definitely going to be kind of interesting to see.
Yeah, it's also, I just think about it in a way, it's like the street team and promotions is like, that's how you get your foot in the door for a lot of people in the industry and just learning how radio works, learning, like your first job. And so it's going to be disappointing. I'm interested to see like if some of these stations don't hire these people back, and it's like, that's a huge entry level job for 20 kids per station,
Yeah, for
15 kids
sure.
per station. And then think about all the markets, in each city. So I'm like, that's a lot of jobs for college kids or for
Yep.
people that are just trying to figure out how to like maneuver this industry that are just gone.
Right.
And so it's like really disappointing. Like I'm like not dis but it's just like I'm like kind of scared to see what happens because it is such a foot in the door for so many people. Like if you talk to anybody who's in radio or like on air or even just people who are like labels now, there's like, oh yeah, I started on the street team at a
Yep.
radio station. Like you can probably put 15, 20 people in a room and at least three people that are in the industry will say something like that.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. One thing we've been kind of, cause like, that's like one of my biggest things too, because every time like people, were like interviewing for the street team or like internships, whatever, like I always like really like hammer that in because I'm like, I was someone exactly like, that's how I got my foot in the door was exactly through that. And, but internships I think are still like, I know for us, especially like we still are really pushing those internships. And even though a lot of them are online more, it's, you're like learning that new age of radio, I guess you can say, because a lot of those things, like if we needed to next, if there was ever a time again, we needed to bump to everything online. It's cool to be able to show these interns that like you can do that now. And we've come up with new ways to be able to do that. So I'm happy that there's still the internships. And I like, if people want to go into radio, I highly recommend doing a radio internship just to see. But yeah, no, I really hope that street teams start becoming a thing again because I agree. And it's so useful too, because you're learning like they're small, some of them are smaller scale events, but I liked having those smaller scale events because it taught me how to kind of work at a bigger scale event, you know? So it's kind of like helped me step up. And I think that that is definitely helpful for a lot of people too.
Yeah, for me, I'm always like, I can like figure out anything because of being in a
Yeah.
street team. I'm like, oh, this speaker doesn't work. Like like if I'm like at a party with friends, I'm like, I got it, I'll figure it out. Or like,
Exactly.
it's like, and there's not a thing that duct tape and zip ties don't fix.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
Just
I
wiggle the
remember,
wire or something.
I was moving my friend last year, and we were just like, loading the U-Haul, and we had like two dollies left, and we're trying to figure out how to fit them in there. And I'm like, I got it, just move. And I like squeezed the two dollies in, like the U-Haul was just like perfectly placed, like with everything. He goes, "You really did work on the street team." I was like,
It's
"I
like
know," because
you gotta fit
it's
those stuff
like
in those cars. You know, put
it's
place.
like a quick thinking. There's not room for you not to have an answer to a problem. It's like
Right.
just figure it out. It's like you
Exactly.
don't call your boss to like help or like if there's an issue, you just don't call them. You just like you figure it out. And so I think that's also it was just like big learning tools. So I really truly hope that, these positions come back for these entry
Yeah,
level.
me too. Me too.
Do you see a huge difference already in the way that radio is being portrayed because of COVID?
Um, kind of just because like at first, especially it was well, something that I'm kind of seeing right now too, that is just hard on I guess any promotions director in radio right now is like all of those shows we gave concert tickets away for that were canceled or being postponed. And it's like, I'm trying to keep track of every single show and all of these winners because obviously no one knew. So it's like we gave away tickets to so many shows and so many people are like, all right, do I still get my tickets? Do I not? And granted, it's coming from like the label and the venue and stuff like that about the direction, but like just trying to keep track of all of these shows and all of these listeners, I'm like, whoa, like I honestly don't know. I'm like, I'm figuring it out and just to kind of see it, but that's kind of crazy. And do I see it changing? Like kind of, but I think after everything, I think radio kind of had a year to figure it out a little bit. And I think that that was a quick jump on your feet ever. I feel like all of the radio companies were like, all right, this has never happened. Like, how do we fix this? So um, I'm excited to see it start slowly going back to how it was, but I think it's going to be even better, which is cool. I think that we can come up with like a lot of new and better ways from what we used to do. So I'm kind of excited to see how it's going to turn out.
How many emails have you gotten like, oh, this show's been canceled. Can I have tickets to the show? I know you're getting those
Oh
emails.
my God. And I'm like, okay, that's not how I'm like, I just don't have a pile of tickets to just be giving people. Oh my God, those are the worst. And it's like, I can't be mad because these people don't really understand.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh my God,
But even before COVID, people would do that. I'd be like, oh, I hear you guys are also giving away these tickets. Can we have tickets to this? And I'm like,
Yep.
it's not
This
how it
isn't how it
works.
works. Yeah. Exactly.
So when you're going to be going through these resumes for internships and street team in the next few months, hopefully, what are you looking for that people that are going to be applying should know to, have on their resume or talk about when they're interviewing with you to get their foot in their door?
It's a good question. So pretty much like for me, what I look for is just so one thing that my boss told me when I got hired originally starting, she was just kind of like, make sure like you are showing the building that like you want to be there. Like, don't just be another person on the street team. The street team can be filled with 20 people. How are you going to stick out? And so like, that's what I did. And so my thing would be if you're going into a street team position or if you're interviewing for a street team position, like ask more about like radio in general, like, or just like you want to learn like the different departments and the different aspects. Cause something I always say too is like, I never knew how radio, like I didn't know how they put the
Operated.
radio station on air every day, like, and how all the different departments worked. So, just kind of learning all of that is cool. So I just think that if you're kind of willing to learn and like you're really eager to be in the industry and you want to learn and you necessarily don't have to love the genre of music, like that's not going to happen with every single person you work with in your career, but just kind of having that willingness to want to jump into any and everything, I think is like super, super important. And just, you're going to be with a team all the time. And just kind of like be that leader aspect and kind of see how you can jump in and help. And even if you have to I feel like I've always kind of made myself be like, oh, you need me to drive to New Jersey to go pick up a guitar? Sure, I'll go, so.
Always. That was me too. Always.
Yes. And that like makes you stick out.
It was to the point where like they'd be like, Julie, go home. Why are you still here? Your shift ended 4 hours ago. Like my boss Tanya was the marketing director and she'd be like, why are you still here? Like I would just sit in her office and like it was the point I was like, well, what are you doing? I want to learn what you're doing. Yeah. And she's like, go away. Like kidding. Like always like, but then she was like going over contracts. Cause we had this big event coming up and I was like, I want to learn how to do contracts. So I would just sit behind her and watch her. And then it was just the point where like, well, if you're going to be here, can you go do this for us? Know? And it's to the point where it was like, they didn't have a choice. They needed me, it was like, I didn't give them the option. It was like, here. I'm staying here and you cannot make me leave. And then it's like, I'm like, also I heard Niall Horan's coming later. So I want to be here.
Exactly. Something just like great advice that I take with me now that my old boss of our market told me. He used to work at a record label and he said that for his internship when it started, the president of the label like asked him to alphabetize the CDs in the back, like in his office. And like my boss at the time was like, all right, this is weird. But then like realized like you're sitting in on every single meeting, you're sitting in on every single phone call. Like that was the point of alphabetizing those CDs, it's like so that you can learn and overhear all of this stuff going on. Like if you're sitting in on the president of the label's stuff, like you are 100% going to learn. So that's what I kind of learned in that, like no task is too big or too small, like it's, if they're giving you the task, it's to benefit something and you're learning in some way. So.
Agreed. Definitely. Do you find it really hard when you interview people for the street team to like trust them to come on? Because there's sometimes like, you can do everything. You can like make their bin for everything that needs to go to events. You can pack the car. You can make sure like the microphone matches with the speaker. And then like still the next day you get like an email from a client that the event didn't go well or they forgot something or these little things. And so it just got to the point where I'm like, I don't know what else I can do.
It's
because so there's sometimes, but then there's like a few, like I had like I'd always have like a core 4 that like always like you knew wanted it. And then there's sometimes the others and I'm just like, come on, you guys are killing me.
Right. Yeah, no, that happens. And exactly. No matter how much you prepare for it, it could still, and it's like, what happened?
Or the pictures come back and they're blurry or something, or there's no logo, there's no client logo, there's nothing. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but like, what did you think? How did you think this photo that you took today was going to benefit me, the client, or the station?
Exactly. No, it's so true. And those are the things that like, hopefully like because if someone makes that one mistake and they're like, oh, I honestly didn't know, it's like, all right, it's a learning experience,
Yeah.
like that whole job is learning, but it's like, all right, so let's just better it next time, like we got this. But yeah, if it kept happening, I'm like, all right, I don't know if this is,
I don't think this is the best fit.
Exactly.
What do you look, what do you guys do big radio shows? Like, do you have a radio show that like you guys had to postpone and you just can't wait to have happen?
So my station, no, but another one of our markets was supposed to have a big show, and I was supposed to go out there and help work it. And I was like so excited. And then I don't even remember who was supposed to headline, but it was a big country show. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't wait. Cause like, I just love that type of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and, it got postponed. So I'm hoping, I don't think it's going to happen this year, but I'm hoping all these big events start happening next year because I've definitely gotten closer with a bunch of other markets now after we've had to do everything online. So I'm going to start jumping to other markets and going to like their big shows and stuff like that if I can, and just help out, because if I can get my face in front of these artist teams and stuff like that, it's going to be more experience for me too. So
Definitely. When do you think I'll see you at a Jonas Brothers show? Do we think we'll have one this year?
Oh my God, I hope soon. It's so funny because I like when Vegas got announced, I was like, I'm gonna go. And then I was like, I have work. I'm probably not gonna go. And now I'm like, are you kidding? Like any and everything that's announced, like
I didn't buy a ticket to Vegas because I was the same way. I was like, oh, I got work like this and that. Now, see ya.
Exactly. First thing announced, I'm like, I'm flying.
Well, because so like there was so much stuff because I got laid off from my radio job during COVID, like at COVID, like I got furloughed for like until like the fall, and then I got laid off in the fall. But I'm like, and then they just laid me off, and there's so many people that didn't reach out to me that I worked with, or like some bosses and stuff like that, and I'm just like, I am never not going to do something because I have work.
Right. Exactly.
Like people do, like your bosses do not care about, like, not that they don't care, but like these companies, it's like, okay, see ya. And I guarantee in like 3 months when someone's gonna be replacing me,
right.
And so I'm just like, I've learned so much that like, nope, I love concerts, make me happy. Also, it's like part of my industry and like work and like going to shows, you still learn things like production and like looking at how the meet and greets and stuff and how different artists run meet and greets and this. And so like, I'm like, I still learn a ton, even though I go to shows so much, but I've learned because of COVID. I'm like, I am always going to do something because I want to do it now. And I'm 100%. Never not going because of work.
I think concerts are valid PTO time no matter what. Like if you're flying, I remember when I like flew out to Miami for the Jonas Brothers for opening night, I was like, I will be gone, but I'll be back the next day. They're like, what? I was like, you got to do it. And then like from it was like Madison Square Garden back to back. And then like kind of East Coast like took over a little bit right there. I was like, I'm going to take half days all these days so I can still go. And then I'm off these days, but I had to do it strategic because I was like, I'm going. They're like,
I took half days too. I took like 2 half days. I'm like, well, this equals 1 day. Because like it was like Mohegan and then New York City. But like, I think the second MSG night was like a long weekend. So we got out of the office early. I'm like, oh, sweet. I don't even have to do it. But the week before it was Mohegan. I'm like, okay, like I want to leave a little early because, I don't want to just get there with the show. And like everybody, all of our friends were going to Mohegan.
Right.
So like we like to all like hang out before, and it's like a cool place to be.
Right.
So I'm like, all right, I'll leave at like 3. I went and picked Heather up at the radio station she works at. Like I worked at a different radio station. So I went and picked her up, and then we just like hopped and went. So like, yeah, I would be like, I'm taking this half day, so that just equals 1 day, and I'm gonna take this.
I'm gonna have to start being strategic because with all of these tours coming back, I'm gonna be like, oh God, like that's a lot.
I think you have till next year. I really don't see concerts coming back this year in full force.
Me either in full. Next year, I think every single artist in the world is going to tour. It's going to be so fun. I've been pretty shocked to see, I've been starting to get a lot of requests for proposals for us for tours for at least country artists for this year, which I'm pretty shocked about. But next year, I think it's for sure going to be full force of
yeah, me too. It's going to be interesting. Yeah. I'm excited though, but I'm also a little overwhelmed because I'm like, how do I fit it all in? How do I get to go to all of them?
What's a job?
But it's also, I just think about,
I'm like, I don't have a job.
There could literally be a time when like Taylor Swift's at Gillette Stadium, like Justin Bieber's at the Garden, And then like Demi Lovato's at like the Bank of America Pavilion in Boston. And I'm like, there could be a time in one night in like one city that like these major artists are all at, and you're gonna have to pick and choose who you're gonna go see.
Exactly.
Like, because, you know, these venues are gonna book every single night of the
Right.
week with these major artists, and it's
Yeah.
like if they're that's
Yeah,
how
it's
their
gonna
tour
be
lines up.
crazy. Yeah.
And then add in the House of Blues and these smaller venues, and
Right.
it's gonna be crazy.
It is, but it's going to be so fun for people that like love concerts. And like for me, especially, like I want to start seeing like artists that I don't usually see, you know, just kind of want to go out there and just start going to like all of these shows. And I just miss it so much. We're not used to not going to live shows, you know, so hopefully.
Crazy. Yeah. I mean, like I said, me and you, we would go a little while without seeing each other, and then we'd literally see each other consistently for like 6 weeks.
Exactly. And it's like, yeah. So hopefully soon.
Seriously. Well, I can't wait till that soon comes so we can hang out and we have our whole crew with Adarina and Kayla and Shay and
I know.
Kaylee and everybody. So it'll be so much fun.
So much fun.
I'm so happy that you're still working and you got your thing going with the radio
you.
station, because it was a little bit of struggle bus for a lot of people. So congrats on keeping your job.
Thank you.
And I'm excited to continue to follow your journey and just catch up and see you in person very soon. And I appreciate you coming on and talking.
Yeah, and thanks for having me. I can't wait to continue watching your journey too. It's so inspiring and I'd love to hear about it.
Oh, thank you so much. That means a lot. Well, thank you everyone for listening to another episode of the Fangirl Fantasy Podcast. I will talk to you all next week.